सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। ओम समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ओम वक्रतुण्डमहाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभ निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। So Hari Om, salutation all.
Hari Om.
How are you doing?
All well, thank you. Today I may have to leave early because I have another meeting which I can't avoid. So I will join later. So I thought I'll just.
No problem. So we were doing the Ganapati Atharva Shirsha and we saw 3 mantras so far. And the third mantra is what we spoke about the prayer that may the Lord protect us. And we saw the different ways in which the Lord can protect us. And it's an overall protection that is asked by the devotee, Sarvatomam Pahi Pahi Samanta. Now continuing in the 4th mantra, Tvam Vangmayastvam Chinmayaha, Tvam Anandamayastvam Brahmamayaha, Tvam Satchidanandadvitiyosi, Tvam Pratyaksham Brahmasi, Tvam Jnanamayo Vijnanamayosi. So he says here, Tvam Vangmayaha. You are the very embodiment of speech. Tvam Chinmayaha. You are pure consciousness. Tvam Anandamayaha. You are of the nature of bliss. Tvam Brahmamayaha. You are the biggest. You are infinite. Brahman. Tvam Satchidananda Dvitiyosi. You are Sat Chit Anand and you are non-dual. Tvam Pratyaksham Brahmasi. You are the manifest reality. Tvam Jnanamayo Vijnanamayosi. You are of the nature of knowledge and wisdom. So this is the literal meaning. So now what does he say here, the deeper meaning here? Tvam Vangmayas Tvam Chinmayaha. You are of the nature of speech, embodiment of speech itself. Though speech cannot define Bhagwan, though we cannot, as many words as we can use, we cannot define God. Because that which is infinite cannot be defined. Only some pointers can be used to realize the Supreme. But here what he means is the very capability in speech to speak comes from the Supreme. Tvam Vangmayaha. Speech is enlivened by the presence of consciousness. See, we generally take this speech for granted. We think that the voice is coming from the throat. If we actually trace the source of sound, the source of sound is supreme silence. All sound comes from silence, is sustained by silence, goes back to silence. If we trace the source of sound physically, then it is not just the throat, it comes from the Nabhi. Those who do yoga, those who do deep pranayam, etc., the sound that does not come only from the throat here. The source of the sound is, when we say all the sounds are produced by friction, but this sound of Omkar is the natural sound in this whole universe. That is Bhagwan. And all the sound come between these 3 only, A, U and Ma. And that's why Ganeshji is equated to Omkar. So one meaning is this, that the source of sound, the capability in the speech comes by the presence of consciousness. If that subtle body is not there, consciousness is not manifesting through the speech, that person will not be able to speak anymore. So if the body is dead, then the speech will not manifest. So what is the source of sound is the Lord. Physically, maybe the organ, yes. But how does that organ function? That capability in the organ comes because of the presence of the Lord consciousness. So in Bhagavatam, this beautiful episode comes where Dhruva is meditating on Bhagwan and he wants darshan of Bhagwan. And we know the story that he was meditating because his father did not treat him lovingly. His father did not take him and make him sit on his lap, and he was shunned. So the mother said, why are you worried about this father? You have a divine father. He always loves you and cares for you. Seek him. So Dhruva went and he got the satsang of Naradji. Naradji initiated him into the mantra Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Dwadashakshari mantra. So Dhruva started doing the japa of that mantra. And in 6 months' time, he had darshan of Bhagwan. Because he did tapasya also. It is not that he is just a child. If you see in Bhagavatam what tapasya Dhruva has done, and Bhagwan manifested in front of him. So when Bhagwan manifested, he was very stunned. Just having darshan of Bhagwan's form, he was stunned. Bhagwan told him to ask a boon. No words are coming out from his mouth. He is spellbound. He is just stunned looking at the form of the Lord. Divine form of the Lord is very resplendent. So Bhagwan with his divine conch, he touched the cheek, the conch, he brought the conch close to the cheek and he touched the cheek of Dhruva with his conch. And Dhruva started speaking. A beautiful shloka in the Bhagavatam which says this, Yonta pravishya mama vacham imam prasuptam sanjivayat yakhila shaktidhara swadhamna anyamscha hasta charana shravanatvagadin pranan namo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam. So Dhruva sings the glory of Bhagwan, that you are the one who has entered me as though, and you are the one who is enlivening my heart, my speech, and all the other sense faculties are able to function only by your grace. We have taken this for granted. We think this is running on autopilot. It cannot run on autopilot. Unless presence of consciousness is not there, like the electricity, if it doesn't enliven the bulb or this computer or a music system, we can't get light or sound or heat or any work we want to do here, because electricity is the enlivener. So our speech is enlivened by the Lord, Tvam Vangmayaha. And this speech is also symbol of both senses of knowledge and senses of action. So we eat through the tongue and we also speak. So when he says Tvam Vangmayaha, you are the embodiment of speech, it also means you are the one who is the enlivener of all the sense faculties. Tvam Chinmayaha, you are pure consciousness. So you will see any great author, before they start writing or they compose or even they sing, they will remember the Lord. Tulsidas says, Vande Vani Vinayakau. My salutations to Saraswati Devi and Vinayaka, Lord Ganesha. Now we should remember here that it is not just the form that is being referred to here. Here Ganesha is a supreme Lord. So don't get confused saying, I thought Saraswati Devi is the deity of speech. Now why Ganesh is referred to here? And the supreme Lord only. As Ishvara is being referred to here. So Tvam Vangmayaha. So how to purify this speech? By By repeating the name of Bhagavan, we purify our speech. So Tvam Vangmayaha, Tvam Chinmayaha, you are of the nature of pure consciousness. What is consciousness if we have to think about it? We generally think consciousness means life. And consciousness, we judge consciousness through the responses that we give. But consciousness is not limited by that actually. What is consciousness? So there's a very beautiful distinction made in Vedanta. What is inert and what is sentient, meaning what is unconscious and what is conscious. We generally associate life, any living being is conscious, inert things, non-living beings are inert. But what is that which is different in the living being, which is not there in the non-living being? That is the subtle body, that is called the mind and the intellect. Consciousness reflecting through the mind and intellect, so we see responses. And in the inert, there is no subtle body, so it cannot respond the way we think of consciousness. So consciousness is defined as what? That which is aware of itself and others around, that is consciousness, without any other means. Swayam bhati anyan bhasayati sadhanam vina. That which is self-aware and which enlivens others without any means. That's the definition of consciousness. It's called samvit consciousness. And what is inert, which does not know itself and which cannot know anything around, is inert. So our body by itself is inert. You know, if our senses could see by themselves, Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda used to say that if eyes can see by themselves, then we will keep one eye in the office. Why? To keep an eye on my spouse. What is my spouse doing there? But the eye can't work like that. Same way all the other senses. Unless the body is enlivened by the touch of consciousness, the body can't become aware. So even today, if the body is seeing anything, senses are seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching, mind is feeling, they are not doing it by themselves. So they are inert only. That because of which they are able to do, that is called consciousness. And here is saying, the devotee is saying that you are that consciousness who is enlivening this entire equipment. So why do we have to search God anywhere else? He is right here, enlivening this body, mind, intellect. So when they asked Ramana Maharshi, can you show me God? You know what Ramana Maharshi did? He did this much only. That person who was, you know, those students there who were tuned up or seekers who were having a certain clarity, they understood that this movement cannot happen without God's grace. Without the touch of consciousness, this inert won't move. And so a devotee does not think, or a seeker does not think that, oh, consciousness is some abstract thing. It is right here and now. In every single word that one is speaking, one experiences. Every single action, even the blinking of the eye happens by the grace of consciousness. In the Kenopanishad it comes that without the grace of that Supreme Lord, not even a blade of grass can be moved by any of the phenomenal forces. Air could not blow one small blade of grass, Vayudevata could not blow away. Mighty cyclones and hurricanes and tornadoes, etc. can come and many things can get destroyed. But if Bhagwan's grace is not there, that one small little blade of grass, he was not able to blow away. Agni Devta could not burn that one small blade of grass because all of them thought they are doing it by themselves and they forgot the Lord. Bhagwan said they need to be reminded, otherwise they will fall in their ego. They will get hurt. They will get injured. So out of compassion, Bhagwan did that whole Leela. What it means to say here is that, oh Lord, you are that pure consciousness who is enlivening this entire equipment. Tvam Vangmayas Tvam Chinmayaha. And every single moment we are conscious. So if the senses are seeing, mind is feeling, intellect is thinking, it is because of presence of consciousness. Consciousness identified with the eyes becomes a perceiver. Eyes by themselves can't perceive. Who is the perceiver in me? Is the consciousness functioning through the eye? Who is the smeller? Who is the taster? Who is the hearer? Who is the toucher? All those are nothing but consciousness identified with one equipment. We don't realize that we are that consciousness. We think we are the perceiver, feeler, thinker. That false notion is what keeps us bound. The body, mind, intellect are equipment. They are not I. Just like we have a book, we have a computer, we have a thermos. Same way we have a body. We are not the body. So one who understands that very well detaches, saying this is the condition of the body. This is not my condition. Body is born, body goes through changes, body becomes old, body dies. I am the witness of all the changes that body goes through. I am unborn, unchanging, undying. That is our true nature as consciousness. So that's what he says here, ki Bhagwan, you are that consciousness and is in right here in our heart. Tvam Vangmayas Tvam Chinmaya. Tvam Anandamayas Tvam Brahmamaya. And you are of the nature of absolute bliss, Anandamaya. Not temporary pleasure. That Param Anand that we seek, permanent happiness is what we seek. From where will we get that? We are seeking that Anand in the world outside. But what we get in the world outside is only temporary pleasure. And that also, how much hard work one has to do for that. Here it is. See, when we identify with some object, suppose we eat something nice, we hear some good music, we see a nice movie, then we get some pleasure out of it, no doubt. But that is dependent on objects. When we meet somebody whom we love, then we experience joy. We spend some time, travel restrictions are lifted little more now, so people do travel, so they meet each other, they feel, oh, so many months after we are meeting, it's so amazing, so they feel joy. Then when we attain some success in our goals, so there is a happiness of the situation. So pleasure, joy and happiness, they are dependent on object, people, situations. And they come and they go, and they are subject to the law of diminishing returns. That's why we continuously need some sensory stimulation, some mental stimulation, because whatever we experience diminishes. Again we need to replenish, again we need to try something new. So this cycle goes on in the world. But what is this? When he says Tvam Anandamayaha, the nature of the Supreme, which is infinite, is bliss, beyond pleasure, beyond joy, beyond happiness. The nature of the Lord is bliss. Why? Because infinity. Ananta is Ananda. That which is infinite, which is endless. There is no boundary in it. Don't we want boundless joy? All of us want boundless joy, but we are seeking boundless joy in things which have boundaries. How will we gain it? It is not possible. That's why the Upanishad say, Alpe Sukham na asti. In Chandogya Upanishad it comes. In the finite, the true bliss is not there. Pleasure is there. If one is seeking pleasure, okay, one will get it. But a person who has seen through life clearly, one understands how many times I have got pleasure, Every time it diminishes, again I am seeking it, again I get exhausted, again I enjoy something, again I want something new. How long this will go on? Whereas when I am in the state of deep sleep, when I am in a state of complete absorption, absolute silence, quietude, then I am not dependent on anything and I experience much more happiness. So the great masters, they said, they understood that in the finite, bliss is not there. Temporary pleasure is there. Alpe sukham na asti bhuma vai sukham. Only in the infinite there is bliss. So if I want bliss, if I want unbound happiness, permanent happiness, then I have to seek in the self. I have to turn the attention within, quieten this mind. So our Gurudev, Swami Chindananji, used to give a equation. What is the equation of happiness? Happiness is equal to number of desires fulfilled by number of desires entertained. Nice equation. Happiness is equal to number of desires fulfilled by number of desires entertained. So suppose I entertain 100 desires, 40 desires of mine are fulfilled, then my happiness quotient is 40%. If 60 are fulfilled, happiness quotient is 60%. So what human being does is, we try to increase the number of desires fulfilled. So we feel that maximum desires fulfilled will be maximum happiness. But we don't realize that every desire that is fulfilled adds to the denominator. Because it is not that if 40 desires are fulfilled, the equation is 40 by 100. Those 40 will give rise to another 80. So the equation will be 40 by 180. So where is the happiness? One goes on increasing the, trying to increase the numerator, the denominator also goes on increasing. So they said this is not the right way to experience happiness. Instead of trying to increase the numerator, what should one do? Decrease the denominator. Reduce the desires. See, even from practical standpoint, if we see, the lesser the desires we have, longer we will enjoy. Even temporary pleasure. Suppose I want to eat an ice cream. And I get the ice cream. And when I'm eating the ice cream, I am so fully with the ice cream, my mind is not thinking about any other desire, then I will enjoy that ice cream much better and much more longer that taste will linger. But while eating the ice cream, if some other 10 desires crowd my mind, then I can't even enjoy that ice cream fully. So even the temporary pleasure we want to enhance, if the desires are reduced, temporary pleasure also will get enhanced. Then comes the final thing, where if all desires are dropped in the state of meditation, all the desires are dropped. Why? Because the desire is dropped. Then what happens? If the denominator becomes 0, happiness becomes infinite. Which is the only way to experience infinite happiness. Tvam Anandamayaha, when he says here that you are of the nature of Ananda. How do I experience that Ananda inside me? Quieten the mind. Quieter the mind, greater the happiness. And complete stillness of the mind, supreme happiness. When the mind only is transcended. So Tvam Vangmayaha, Tvam Chinmayaha, Tvam Anandamayaha. You are of the nature of absolute bliss, which is our nature also. So if we want to seek happiness, we have to seek within. Happiness, by here happiness I mean permanent happiness or bliss. Pleasure, joy, happiness we can seek in the world outside. But we should know that they can only give that much. If I expect permanent happiness from any of them, it will not happen. That has to be only from inside. So Tvam Anandamayaha, the source of happiness, the source of knowledge, the source of peace is in our heart. Tvam Anandamaya, Tvam Brahmamaya. You are the biggest. Brihatvad Brahma. What is the biggest in this world? If we see, no form can be biggest. The biggest in this world is space. That which accommodates everything inside it is space. Avakashatvat akasha. All this exists in space. Every other form, however big it may be, is limited because it is in space. Space is the biggest. What is bigger than space? Bigger than space is mind. Because from the mind only space comes. If mind is not active, space and time we don't experience. In deep sleep, there is no space, there is no time. So that space and time are also projections of the mind. So mind is greater than space. What is greater than mind is consciousness, which enlivens this mind, without which mind can't function, is this consciousness. So one way to understand Brahman is it is the biggest, it is the enlivener of consciousness, it is the enlivener of the mind, enlivener of this whole world. Other way to understand is that which has no limitation, which is not limited by space, not limited by time, not limited by object. That is called biggest. That's the definition of infinity in our Vedanta. How beautifully it is defined, you see. Science also doesn't come anywhere close to this definition. What is infinite? That which is not limited by space, which is all pervasive, which is there even when space is absent. That is infinite. Which is not limited by time, past, present and future. It doesn't change in time. It is the same. And it remains even when time is not there. Like in deep sleep, time is not there. So that which is the same in all three periods of time, which is all pervasive, and which is the same in all objects. So the flask has a certain property, the book has a certain property, the computer has a certain property. Each one is unique. Each one limits the other. But what is common in all the three is it exists. That existence is Brahman, is consciousness. So we see that what is same in all objects is existence, consciousness, bliss. Just that this inner doesn't have capability to manifest consciousness and bliss. This has a capability to manifest consciousness and bliss. That's the only difference. Otherwise, it is the same in both. So that is called the biggest, which is not limited by space, not limited by time, not limited by objects, which means it is imperishable, eternal, all pervasive. Tvam Vangmayas, Tvam Chinmayah, Tvam Anandamayas, Tvam Brahmamayah. You are the biggest, you are the infinite. Now please remember, all this is to make us also understand that though we may worship the Lord in a form, we also know that the Lord is absolute consciousness who is all pervasive. He is not limited by form. So those people who think, Hindus are idol worshipper, they are very primitive people, they don't know anything. What they don't know anything, come to understand Vedanta. Then one will understand properly that why this form is required. Because how do I comprehend the infinite, what is all pervasive, which is beyond space-time object? The mind is not used to thinking like that. It always thinks in terms of picture. So some visual representation is required. So there are forms. Bhagavan manifests in the specific forms to help the devotee to make the mind single pointed and finally transcend the attachment to the mind. One will experience the divine in oneself. So though we may worship the form, we also know that the Lord is the infinite supreme truth beyond space, time, object. Desha, Kala, Vastu, Aparichinna. Then he says, Tvam Satchidananda Dvitiyosi. You are of the nature of Sat, Chit, Anand. Existence, consciousness and bliss. Each of us are aware or not, I am. Wherever there is mind, there awareness will be there, I am. So plants, birds, animals, humans, we all are aware, I am. But only where there is intellect, there is self-awareness consciously. The plants, birds, animals are aware, but instinctively, not self-aware. Consciously, they don't know. But we know because the buddhi is there, intellect is there, subtle intellect is in us. So we all are aware, I am aware of my existence, and that existence and consciousness is infinite. So it's of the nature of bliss, Anandamaya, what was said earlier. So he says here, you are that Satchidanand and you are in my heart. Kaman Satchidananda Advitiyosi. You are one, non-dual. Now this is very powerful. You are the non-dual absolute reality where there is no division. Creation, creature, creator. That division is not there. Like the waker is one. That one waker will manifest as the dream creator, the dream world, and the dream character. It is one manifesting as three. In the same way, just like, in light, if you see white beam of light passes through a prism, appears as the 7 colors of the spectrum. Light is only one. It appears as 7. Same way, one truth appearing through the prism of Maya becomes creator, Ishvara, creation, Jagat, creature, Jiva. Otherwise it is one. Why we say it is one, non-dual? Because what is infinite cannot be more than one. If the infinite is more than one, then it doesn't remain infinite. It becomes finite and it will perish. So Advitiya, it is one non-dual reality. Again here, we may worship so many forms, but we know that all those forms are representations of one infinite truth. Ahead it will come. Tvam Brahma, Tvam Vishnu, Tvam Rudras, Tvam Indras, Tvam Agnis, Tvam Vayus, Tvam Suryas, Tvam Chandramas, Tvam Brahma Bhurbhuvas Varun. You are all these. Meaning one reality is appearing as so many forms. No, but why should we have so many forms? It's a very interesting question. Why should we have so many forms? Do we question why should we have so many types of cuisine? South Indian is there, Chinese is there, Italian is there, whatever, Mediterranean cuisine is there. Plus in our country, each state has a different cuisine. Nobody questions. In fact, one wants. Today we have made Italian menu. Tomorrow there is continental. Day after tomorrow is South Indian. We like variety. If every day same food is given 3 times a day, who will like to eat? We have variety in clothes, we have variety in food, we have variety in our entertainment. Everywhere we have variety. But when it comes to Bhagavan, no, it should be only one. That is our conditioning. Why are there so many forms? Because there are so many temperaments. Just imagine, suppose Ganesh is the only form. Now if I don't like Lord Ganesha, elephant head he has and long trunk and grey head and human body and big belly, I don't like Ganesha. Suppose one says I don't like Ganesha, then now that person is stuck. Can devotion arise by force? Can you make somebody love by force? No, you have to love this form only. You can't make that person love by force. So Bhagavan manifests in so many forms. So Shiva is there, Durga is there, Devi is there, Vishnu is there, Brahma is there. So many forms are there. Whichever one worships, take that form, because ultimately it is one only. So we have no conflict. And nobody is forced. This alone has to be the way. No. Hundreds and thousands of ways are there. And if you want to create your own form in which you want Bhagavan to manifest, Bhagavan will manifest in that form also. In the Gita, the Lord says that Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam tathaiva bhajamyaham. In whichever way the devotee approaches me, in that way I will bless the devotee. Yo yo yam yam tanum bhakta shraddhaya architumicchati tasya tasya chalam shraddham tameva vidadhamyaham. Whichever form the devotee worships me in, I will bless the devotee with more and more Shraddha in that form. See, the Gita has the word yo, yo, yam, yam. Well, many people say yo, it's a modern word. It's there in the Gita, it's in there in Veda also. It's Sanskrit word, yaha becomes yo by Sandhi. Meaning whoever, whichever form one worships, whatever form one likes, in that form Bhagavan will manifest and increase the Shraddha of the devotee. So we know that the Supreme is one, Advitiya. From Satchidananda Advitiyosi. Now the word Advitiya also means what? Not only that Bhagavan is one and he is all the forms, Advitiya also means the Lord is one with the whole creation. There is only one truth, which is appearing as this whole creation. One ocean appears as thousands of waves. So for us, every single thing in this creation is divine. It's an appearance of the Lord. So if Hiranyakashipu asks Prahlad, is your God in this pillar also? He has no hesitation to say yes. Because that's the clarity and that's the experience that one absolute truth alone is, and that alone is manifesting as all this. So right from a stone to the absolute formless, everything we worship in our culture, not because we are primitive, because we have clarity that one infinite alone is appearing as all this. So let me worship all this as appearance of the divine, because that is a fact. Every single ocean is an appearance of the wave. Every single wave is appearance of ocean alone. That vision, when we lose, the vision of Advitiya, the vision of oneness, when we lose, then we start becoming selfish, egoistic. We kill each other. We, manipulate each other. We hurt each other, exploit each other. What all happens in the world? Why? Because oneness is not there. This vision of oneness, we can apply at every level. Suppose there is one feeling, all the members of the family feel we are one family. And for the harmony of the family, we learn to adjust with each other, sync our differences, work together with love. Why? Because we are one family. How nice life would be. But why are we not able to live in that? Because we forget this vision of oneness. We forget the common source. I'm not even talking about divine source. Even the family source, that our ancestors are common. We belong to one particular family lineage. Why are we fighting with each other? On petty things, on power, on money, on land, on building, on shares. What all fights one goes on doing? No, Swamiji, they are doing that. I have to reply. I will fight. We both keep fighting. Vision of oneness is gone. One can apply this everywhere. As a company, if all the employees are able to identify with the vision of the company, together works towards attaining that, company will prosper. As a country, every state thinks the country is first. If that feeling is there, nation above self, as individual also, as a state also, then we will work for the country, not for our own state, our own community. And some states want to get, they break away from India because vision of oneness is not there. How much of gender discrimination is happening because we don't see vision of oneness? How much of racial discrimination is happening because we don't see oneness? Just pigment of the skin and so much exploitation. So this vision of oneness is important. The highest level of oneness is to say that all of us are divine. But we can start from simpler levels. From family to company to community to a state to the country to the whole world. We are global citizens. Global things that are happening will affect us. Climate change is a reality. That's just one example. Terrorism, climate change, what all is not happening in the world. Today, COVID, it's all a reality. It's affecting everyone. We have to respond as global citizens, not as some one country and one community, and then we will be stuck. Still rising above that, if we say we all are living beings, so much of violence that we do on nature and on living beings, that will stop. Non-vegetarian food, non-vegetarian industry is the second largest contributor to global warming, second largest. And just for the pleasure of 2 inches of tongue, we don't feel taste before it, we don't feel taste below it. Only for the 2 inches of tongue, how many animals are killed? So unfortunate. Why? Because we don't see oneness. Their pain means nothing to us. Our pleasure means more than their pain. So most of the suffering in this world is because of the lack of vision of oneness at every level. Vedanta goes to the heights of saying that not only we are one as living beings, we are one with the inert things also. Akhanda mandalakaram vyaptam yena chara charam. The inert and the sentient is pervaded by only one consciousness. That consciousness is our true self. No, Swami, that I can't believe. In the dream, there are dream mountains and rivers and stones, and there are dream creatures, animals, plants, birds, humans. All of them are appearance of only one waker's mind. That is called oneness. Between inert and sentient also there is no difference. Except the difference of equipment, the essence in both is the same. How humbling that is to understand that the self in me is the self in an ant, is the same self in a grain of sand. So what big ego am I having? That I am human being, I am the roof and crown of creation. The existence in that sand is the same existence in this. There is no difference. That's why Vedanta is the most humbling knowledge ever, complete leveler. All distinction it will destroy. And people talk about breaking boundaries and shackles and inhibitions. Come to study Vedanta, then all the boundaries will be broken. One will come to the most basic factor. That which pervades everything is existence. Bodies will come, bodies will go. Things will come, things will go. But existence remains untouched, unaffected. Many, many waves can rise and fall. Water remains unaffected. That consciousness is our true self. So a person who understands that will worship the Lord also with that bhav that Bhagavan, you alone are all this, which means the Lord is appearing as all forms. The Lord is appearing as all the divine forms of God are one. The whole creation also is appearance of the Lord, and the same Lord is enlivening this one. So I am also one with that infinite. There is no difference of devotee and the Lord. That difference is gone. That is the highest realization. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, when he is worshipping Mother Kali, at one point he comes to that experience of oneness. He stops offering flowers to Kali. He says that Kali is here in my heart. He starts offering on his head. That is Advitiya. The worship of the form leads us to the realization of the non-dual absolute self. The highest achievement possible is to realize that absolute oneness. So form worship is not primitive, and don't condemn form worship. There are people who have realized using that form, and there is no way that one will bypass form. Every single person who tried to reject form, the form has been brought back by human being. Buddha tried to reject form. Today the biggest idol in the world are Buddha's idols. Think about it. Which form of spirituality doesn't have a form? Either they will have some sound, they will have some mantra, words of that mantra will be there, or a direction will be there, some color will be there. All these are forms, or om, sound of om will be there. Some form is required, otherwise the mind can't imagine. But using that form, when the mind has learned to become quiet and dropped all the false notions and divisions, one comes to oneness. Tvam Satchidananda Dvitiyosi. And what is the experience of that Advitiya? Tvam Pratyaksham Brahmasi. You are the Pratyaksha Brahma. Pratyaksha means manifest. So this has two meanings. One is you are the manifest Brahman, meaning you are the manifest form. So you are not just some inert idol or a picture. Whenever we sit in the puja room, our bhavana should be Bhagwan is there. And if you know the method of puja when we do, unless it's a prana pratishtha, which is only in temples and some places where every day then Bhagwan is treated as a person who is there. So Bhagwan is woken up, given bath, clothes, food, everything, arti, puja, full day there's a dinacharya that one has to follow. But where there is no such prana pratishtha, whenever the devotee goes to the puja room to worship the Lord, first the devotee does what? Touch the heart, touch the murti or the picture and invoke the divine. And now the bhavana is Bhagwan who is in my heart, who I cannot experience, I'm not experiencing right now, is now in this murti, in this picture. So the bhavana with which Bhakta worships is Bhagwan is there. So Bhakta's bhavana is not that I am worshipping some idol. Like for the soldier, the piece of cloth is not called flag. For the soldier, flag means country. Honor of the flag is honor of the country. That's the bhavana for the soldier. Like for us, the picture or the or any, let us say, DP, display picture of my son. My son is on my display picture, let us say. Now that is not just some pixels illuminated by the phone. It is my son. That DP will invoke that bhavana in me. So for the devotee, the Lord is Pratyaksha. Tvam Pratyaksham Brahmasi. You are the manifest form here right now in front of me. So one worships with that bhavana. That is one meaning. Second meaning is Pratyaksha Brahma also means in my own heart as Aham. Every single moment I feel I am, I am, I am, I am. Nobody can feel I am not. Try feeling I am not. It is not possible. Who knows that I am not? That person has to be there to know I am not. So one can never feel I am not, which means I will never be absent. That is called immortality. We are immortal even right now. As pure consciousness, we are immortal. Just that we identify with the body, so we think we are born, we are growing, we are old, we will die. Who will die? Body will die. Body is already dead. We already saw Tvam Chinmayaha. He is the consciousness which enlivens this body, otherwise it's anyway dead. The bulb by itself is inert, it has no light. If electricity enlivens, it has light. So in our heart, the Lord manifests. Tvam Pratyaksham Brahmasi. You are in the heart as Brahman. Every single minute we feel Aham, Aham, Aham. That pure I, not I am Mr. So and so, I am tall, I am dark, I am young, I am handsome, I am happy, I am sad. Those are adjectives of the BMI. If you remove those adjectives, in meditation, detach from all the adjectives and just focus on I am. Nisargadatta Maharaj, if you read his book, I am that. In that he says this, focus on I am, that's it. Drop all other adjectives. In meditation, outside one plays the roles, one place knowing it's a role. But in meditation, drop all adjectives. Whatever the mind says, drop. Then what happens? I am. That I am has no boundaries. It is unlimited, infinite. It is Tvam Pratyaksham Brahmasi. Tvam Jnanamayo Vijnanamayosi. You are of the nature of knowledge and wisdom. So Jnana and Vijnana. One is knowledge, Second is when the knowledge is applied, the transformation that happens, that is called wisdom. So one meaning of jnana and vijnana is you are the knowledge and you are the wisdom also, both. All the knowledge which is there in the world about all the various subjects, that knowledge comes from Bhagavan. And when we use that knowledge, how are we able to apply that capability to apply in our mind? That also is because of the Lord. And when we apply that, the resultant transformation in us, that is also by Bhagavan's grace. So Tvam Jnanamayo Vijnanamayo Si. So knowledge and wisdom. Then here it is also Jnana and Vijnana can also mean all the objective sciences are Jnana. The subjective science is Vijnana. So objective sciences about physics, chemistry, biology, whatever, all those subjects about the world outside is Jnana. That also is appearance of the divine. And knowledge of the true self within, consciousness within, that is called Vijnana. So Tvam Jnanamayo Vijnanamayo Si. So whenever we seek knowledge also, whenever we are applying knowledge also, we should remember that the source of this is the Lord Himself. Because we may feel, I invented something, I did something, I brought some new idea, it was my creativity. It is apparent that it is my creativity, it appears that it is my creativity. But from where does it arise? It arises from the Lord. If the wave says it is my special capability, the wave has no capability actually. It is the power of the ocean which is manifesting through the wave. The currents of the ocean, the strength of the ocean is manifesting through the wave. Bhagavan has given us the buddhi, body, mind, intellect we have, but the enlivener of that is the Lord. So all this comes from the Lord. So there is not a single thing that I can do all by myself. Even the basic thing of breathing, digestion, circulation, assimilation, evacuation, all that happens by grace of the Lord alone. This is, I'm talking only physical level. Then, of course, the mind and the intellect, emotions, thoughts, creativity, innovation, all that comes by Bhagavan's grace. And that's why whenever we start anything new, auspicious, we first pray to Bhagavan, Ganesha. Why? Because this ego arises and that ego creates all obstacles. If I can put aside the ego and remember that all this is happening by grace of Bhagavan, I have put aside the main source of obstacle. Gone. That person realizes oneness. Will be successful in whatever that person takes up also. And hence, Ganesh Ji is Prathama Pujya. We worship the Lord because he is Gananam Isha. He is the Lord of all the attendants. Who are the attendants in us? His senses. They bring knowledge to us. The mind, feeling, intellect arises, brings thoughts to us. This body, mind, intellect are the Gana. Who is the Isha of this? Supreme Lord. So, Tvam Jnanamayo Vijnanamayo Si. You are of the nature of absolute knowledge as well as the objective knowledge outside. So, for today, I will stop here. Anybody has any questions, anything you want to ask, you are welcome. You can unmute and ask. Yeah. Vijay, you want to ask something?
Swamiji, when we say all the inert matter also has the jiva, the same intelligence, I think it's our intellect that makes us different from the others. And how does all that work, or how does that come into the picture?
See, the intellect is there in human being, but the inert things don't have that capability. We have mind and intellect both. The inert doesn't have. That is called subtle body. If you introduce subtle body in the inert, then that subtle body also will respond like us. So the only difference between them and us is that they don't have mind and intellect. We have. And so we feel different than them. But if we go down to the existence level, existence is same in both. Matter is also same in both. Both are made up of 5 elements only.
We have the ability to make choices, they don't. Would we
Yes.
say that?
Correct. We have ability to make choices because we have an intellect. And they can't make any choices because there is no awareness, there is no intellect, there is no, even mind is not there in them. Plants, birds, animals, they can make choices because they have mind. They have a gross intellect. We don't, they don't have a subtle intellect. We have a subtle intellect. So we are able to understand our own existence intelligently. They can't understand. So their choices will only be limited to what to eat, who is a friend, who is a threat, those gross choices. We can make subtler choices. What is temporary, what is permanent, what is right, what is wrong. Because we have self-awareness because of the buddhi. So that's the difference.
Thank you, Swami. Hari Bol, thank you.
All right. So we continue.
We missed Sajay and Swati today.
हाँ जी. Om Asato ma Sadgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Guru